The human ship drifted through the silence of space, its engines humming softly like a tired giant breathing in the dark. Outside, stars stretched forever, sharp and cold, but inside the ship the crew was restless. They had followed a faint distress signal for 2 days, hoping to find survivors or something worth salvaging. When they finally reached the broken vessel, it looked like a grave. The alien ship floated without power, its metal skin torn open by burns and scars. Black marks crawled along the hull as if fire itself had clawed at it. Pieces of metal drifted around like dead leaves in the wind. Captain Hale ordered a small team to board. He was cautious, but also curious. Abandoned ships always carried secrets, sometimes treasure, sometimes danger. The air inside the alien craft was cold, bitterly cold, the kind of cold that made breath fog instantly. The lights from their helmets cut through the darkness, showing long hallways filled with shadows. No sound, no movement, just the groaning metal as the ship shifted slightly under invisible forces. Empty, one of the crew muttered. But Hale didn't believe it. Ships don't scream for help unless something or someone is still alive. They searched carefully, step by step, room by room. Everything looked ruined. Panels torn from the walls, strange symbols burned away, frozen wires hanging like vines. It smelled like old smoke and dead air. But then, they heard it. A sound. Soft. Weak. Almost too small to notice. It wasn't metal groaning. It wasn't broken machines clicking. It was a whimper. Hale froze, raising his hand to silence the others. The sound came again, a trembling noise that echoed faintly through the corridor. Something alive. Something hiding. They followed it. The team moved slow, careful not to scare whatever was waiting in the dark. Their lights caught a small doorway, half blocked by fallen panels. The sound came from inside. Hale motioned, and together they pulled the debris away. The door opened with a creak. Inside the small chamber, in the corner, was something none of them expected. She was tiny. An alien no bigger than a human child, crouched against the wall, her arms wrapped around herself. Her skin shimmered faintly, pale silver with veins of light pulsing underneath. Large black eyes stared at them, wide and wet, filled with fear. She was shivering, her whole body trembling as if even the air was knives against her skin. For a moment, no one moved. The human crew had seen many strange things in space, but never something like her. She looked fragile, breakable, but her presence pulled at them like gravity in a dark room. Hale spoke first, his voice calm. "It's okay. We won't hurt you." Of course, she didn't understand the words, but tone is universal. She flinched at first, then tilted her head slowly, eyes unblinking. One of the crew whispered, "Captain, she's just a kid." But Hale wasn't so sure. Aliens were rarely what they seemed. Still, his chest tightened when he saw her teeth chatter, her thin arms shaking. The alien tried to stand but stumbled, too weak. She pressed herself harder into the corner as if the wall could swallow her up. And then she made a sound. A tiny, broken sound. Not a word, but a plea. Hale knelt down, lowering his weapon. He removed his glove and held out his hand, palm open, showing he carried nothing dangerous. Slowly, the alien's eyes flicked to it. She didn't move. She didn't trust, but she kept shivering. Hale sighed. "She's freezing. The air was colder here than in the rest of the ship. Their suits could handle it. She couldn't. Another minute and she might stop breathing. We need to get her out," Hale ordered. The crew hesitated. No one wanted to touch something unknown. Diseases, traps, tricks. Space was full of them. But letting her die here didn't feel right either. Hale made the choice himself. He stepped forward, moving slow. The alien hissed weakly, baring small, sharp teeth. But she was too frail to fight. Hale wrapped his thermal blanket around her tiny body. For a second she resisted, but then the warmth seeped in and her trembling slowed. Her big black eyes blinked once, twice, and then she let out a soft sigh, almost like relief. Hale carried her carefully out of the ruined chamber. The crew followed, whispering doubts behind him. What if it's dangerous? She doesn't look dangerous. That doesn't mean anything. But Hale kept walking. In his arms, the alien's small body pressed close to the heat of the blanket. She seemed fragile, helpless. Yet in the back of his mind, Hale felt uneasy. Why was she the only survivor? Why was the distress signal still calling? If she was too weak to send it? And most of all, why did her eyes, deep and dark, as the void, not just show fear, but something else? Something watching. Something waiting. Back on the human ship, warmth returned. The air recyclers hummed. The lights glowed steady, and the faint smell of steel and oil made it feel alive compared to the broken wreck they had left behind. Captain Hale carried the small alien through the narrow halls, the blanket still wrapped tight around her. She was light, almost too light, like holding only bones covered with skin. Her big black eyes never closed, never looked away. They watched everything, the walls, the crew, the captain's face. The others followed, whispering doubts. Fear, always, grew louder when silence pressed in. She's not safe. She could be a trap. Captain, what if she's not what she looks like? Hale said nothing. He could feel the tension, but he also felt her trembling body against his chest. She wasn't strong enough to be a threat. At least, not yet. They reached the medbay. The room was bright, lined with clean white panels and humming machines. Hale placed her gently on the medical bed. She curled up instantly, still shivering, clutching the blanket tighter as if afraid someone would steal it. Dr. Laris approached, cautious but curious. Fascinating, she murmured, scanning the alien with a handheld device. The machine beeped and blinked. Her body temperature is dangerously low. Heart rate very weak. She's starving, Captain. Starving? Hale frowned. We can feed her. The doctor shook her head slowly. Not the way you think. The alien shifted, her dark eyes snapping to the doctor's voice. She listened, though no one knew how much she understood. Her small fingers twitched against the blanket as if she was holding back something. Hale pulled out a food pack, tearing it open. A warm smell of spiced protein filled the room. He held it out to her, smiling gently. Here, eat. The alien tilted her head, studying the food carefully. She didn't move. Her eyes flicked from the pack, to Hale's hand, then to his chest where the warmth of his body still lingered, and then she looked away. She wasn't interested. The silence grew heavier. The crew exchanged nervous glances. Hale lowered the pack. Something wasn't right. The alien lifted her gaze again, locking eyes with him. For just a second, Hale felt it. A pull, a strange weakness in his chest, as though something invisible was reaching for him. The moment passed quickly, but he didn't imagine it. He knew it was real. She wasn't hungry for food. She was hungry for something else. Dr. Laris narrowed her eyes. She needs energy, heat, maybe even life force. Captain, if I'm right, she feeds in ways we don't. The words hung like a knife in the air. The crew shifted uneasily, one muttering under their breath. She's a parasite. The alien flinched at the sound, as if she sensed the hostility without understanding the language. She pulled the blanket tighter, her eyes glistening, her body curling smaller. Hale raised his hand to silence them. He crouched near the bed, lowering his voice. Look at her. She's not attacking. She's not fighting. She's just trying to live. The alien blinked slowly, and for the first time her trembling eased. Maybe it was the warmth, maybe it was the tone of his voice, but she seemed to relax just enough to stop clutching the blanket like a shield. The ship hummed around them, steady, alive. But Hale's mind spun with questions. Why had her people left her behind? Why did she look so innocent yet so dangerous? And why did it feel like deep down she was studying them just as much as they were studying her? Hours passed. The alien stayed curled on the bed, her eyes sometimes closing, sometimes opening again, never truly asleep. Whenever Hale or the doctor moved too close, she tensed. But when the heater unit was placed nearby, blowing warmth into the blanket, she sighed and leaned toward it like a flower reaching for sunlight. That night, when most of the crew returned to their bunks, Hale stayed behind. He sat in the med bay watching her. The ship was quiet except for the steady hum of the engines. And then it happened. The captain's eyelids grew heavy. His body sagged with sudden exhaustion. He rubbed his temples, frowning. He had been tired before, but this was different. This was draining, like the strength was being pulled from his muscles. His eyes snapped open. The alien was watching him again. Her eyes glowed faintly in the dim light. Just for a moment. A shimmer, a spark, like heat rising from black stone. She didn't move closer. She didn't reach out. But Hale felt it. Something invisible tugging at him, feeding from him. And then, just as quickly, it stopped. The glow faded. Her body sagged back against the pillow. She looked weaker again, like she hadn't stolen anything but borrowed it for a moment. Her lips trembled. Her chest rose and fell in shallow breaths. Hale sat frozen, his hand gripping the edge of the bed. His heart pounded, not from fear, but from realization. She wasn't innocent. She wasn't harmless. And yet, she wasn't evil either. She was surviving. As the ship drifted deeper into the dark silence of space, Hale whispered to himself, "What are you?" The alien didn't answer. She only stared, her big black eyes reflecting the light of the ship, watching, waiting, shivering still. And Hale understood one thing clearly. This was no ordinary rescue. It was the beginning of something far more dangerous. The human ship sailed quietly through the dark sea of stars. Most of the crew slept, wrapped in the comfort of recycled air and humming engines. But Captain Hale did not sleep. He sat alone in his cabin, staring at his reflection in the metal wall. His face looked pale, drained. Something had happened in the med bay. He felt it in his bones. The tiny alien had taken something from him. Not food, not water. Something deeper. A pull he could not explain. He rubbed his chest, remembering the way her eyes had glowed faintly, the shimmer like fire under ice. She had looked stronger after that moment, though only for a heartbeat. Then she collapsed back into weakness, as if even feeding came at a terrible cost. Was she dangerous, or just desperate? The question burned in his mind. The next morning, the crew avoided the med bay. Whispers moved faster than truth. She's a parasite. She'll kill us in our sleep. She's only small now. What if she grows? Fear spreads quickly in small ships. Hale knew this, and fear often turned into hate. But when he entered the med bay again, he saw not a monster, but a fragile being still curled under the blanket. She was awake, her black eyes fixed on him the second he walked in. Always watching, always aware. Dr. Lara stood nearby, checking the monitors. "Captain," she said softly, "I've been studying her readings. Her body runs on a different system. She doesn't process solid food at all. She doesn't even digest like we do. She absorbs directly. Pure energy." Hale frowned. Energy? Heat. Light. Maybe even the life force of others. That's why she was drawn to you. The words landed heavy. Hale crossed his arms. "So she feeds on us?" "Not exactly." The doctor tapped the screen, showing faint pulses of light. "She takes, yes, but not much. Barely enough to hurt. Like a moth stealing warmth from a flame. If she meant to kill, Captain, you would already be dead." Hale looked back at the alien. She blinked slowly, her thin arms clutching the blanket. Her face carried no malice, no cruelty, only hunger. And yet, hunger can be dangerous. Later, that cycle, Hale decided to test something. He dimmed the medbay lights and stood by the heater unit. The alien stirred instantly, her head lifting, eyes glowing faintly. She reached one trembling hand toward the warmth. He watched carefully. When he moved closer, she leaned not toward the heater, but toward him. Hale felt it again, the pull. His chest tightened, his breath caught. She was drawing from him, invisible threads of heat and strength. For a moment, dizziness swept over him. But then he saw her expression. Relief. Her body relaxed. Her trembling eased, her lips parted in something close to a sigh. She wasn't attacking, she was feeding, quietly, carefully, almost gently. Hale pulled back suddenly. The connection snapped, leaving his skin prickling cold. The alien whimpered, small and sharp, curling back into herself. "Captain?" Dr. Laris stepped forward. Hale raised a hand. His heart beat hard, but not with fear. With understanding. "She doesn't just want warmth," he whispered. "She needs it from us." That night Hale could not sleep again. He walked the ship's halls hearing the whispers of his crew. "We should leave her at the next station. She's dangerous. She'll drain us all." The words bit at him. They were not wrong, but they were not right either. Hale found himself standing outside the medbay door again. He pressed the panel and entered quietly. The alien stirred, opening her wide black eyes. She didn't hiss. She didn't hide. She only looked at him, shivering still. Slowly, Hale sat beside her bed. For a long moment, they only stared at each other. Then, without words, she reached out a hand. Tiny. Trembling. Hale hesitated. His instinct screamed caution, but something deeper inside him, something human, told him not to pull away. He extended his hand slowly, letting her touch his skin. The effect was instant. A surge of weakness rippled through him. Not sharp, not painful, just draining. His breath grew shallow, his vision dimmed slightly. But at the same time she brightened. Her skin shimmered faintly with silver veins, her trembling eased, and her eyes softened. She released him after, only a second, pulling her hand back quickly as if ashamed. She curled into the blanket again, watching him with a guilty, almost fearful expression. Hale sat there, breathing hard. She could have taken more. She could have drained him completely. But she hadn't. She chose to stop. And in that moment, Hale understood her secret. She wasn't a killer. She wasn't a monster. She was starving. Alone. Afraid to take too much even when her body screamed for it. Her secret was simple, but terrible. To live, she needed others. And without others, she would die. Hale leaned back in his chair, whispering to himself, "We're not her rescuers. We're her lifeline." The alien's black eyes closed at last. For the first time since they found her, she slept, peacefully, warmly, while the human captain sat watch, carrying the weight of her truth. And outside, in the endless dark of space, the stars burned cold. The ship glided quietly through the void, its engines humming like a steady heartbeat. But inside, the mood was far from calm. The discovery of the tiny alien had split the crew into two sides. Those who saw her as a helpless creature worth saving, and those who saw only danger. Captain Hale sat at the central table in the mess hall, listening to their voices clash. "She drains us," said Joran, the weapons officer. His fists slammed against the table. "We're food to her. Parasite, nothing more." Dr. Laris shook her head firmly. "You don't understand. She's not killing anyone. She takes only what she needs. If she wanted to harm us, we wouldn't be standing here." "She's still a risk," Joran snapped. "What happens if she grows stronger? What happens if she can't control herself?" Hale stayed silent, his eyes fixed on the metal surface. He had felt her touch. He had seen the choice she made, the choice to stop feeding before it was too much. That mattered, but fear was louder than reason. In the med bay, the alien sat quietly, wrapped in her blanket. The heater glowed beside her, but her black eyes still flicked toward the door every time footsteps passed. She knew she was being discussed. Even without words, she could feel it, the distrust pressing in from the walls. When Hale entered, she lifted her head instantly. Her eyes softened just slightly, as if she recognized him not as a captor but as something closer. "Don't worry," Hale murmured, though he knew she couldn't understand. "I won't let them throw you out." The alien blinked once, slowly, then reached a thin hand toward him. Hale didn't move closer. He only let her gesture linger. She was asking, but she wasn't forcing. That alone told him something important. Later that cycle, Hale tried something different. He brought her out of the medbay. The crew was wary, stepping back as the small silver-skinned figure entered the hall. Wrapped in her blanket, she looked even smaller, like a shadow of a child carried by the cold. The alien's wide eyes darted around, taking in the glowing panels, the pipes running along the ceiling, the blinking lights of control screens. Every sound seemed new to her. She touched the edge of a chair, then quickly pulled back as if afraid she might break it. Laris encouraged gently. "She's learning," Joran muttered. "She's hunting." Hale ignored him. He guided her to the viewing deck. Beyond the wide glass window, the stars stretched forever, a river of light in endless darkness. The alien pressed her small hands against the glass, eyes wide, glowing faintly with reflected starlight. For a long moment she was completely still. Then she let out a sound. Not a cry. Not a word. Just a soft, trembling hum. It was beautiful. The sound vibrated in the air, low and melodic, like a forgotten song carried by the void. The crew, who had followed, stood silent, listening. Even Joran frowned, caught off guard. When the sound faded, the alien turned back to Hale. Her lips trembled, her eyes searching. She wanted connection. She wanted to belong. And in that moment, Hale felt the room shift. She wasn't just some creature anymore. She was someone. That night, Hale couldn't rest. He sat in his cabin, staring at the log he was supposed to record. Command would expect details. Alien species, risk assessment, possible resources. He should have written, unknown hostile, potential danger. Instead, he wrote nothing. He remembered the way she stopped feeding before he collapsed. He remembered her cautious hand reaching for him. And now, he remembered her song, the hum that carried sorrow and hope at the same time. She was more than survival. She was asking to be seen. The next day, Hale returned to the med bay alone. The alien was awake, sitting upright for the first time. Her trembling had lessened. Her black eyes followed him closely. He sat across from her, slowly, carefully. He placed his hand flat on the table between them. She hesitated. Then with small steps she crawled forward. Her fingers, cold and delicate, touched his hand. The pull came again, the drain of warmth and strength. But it was softer this time. Controlled. She wasn't taking. She was sharing. Hale felt it clearly. A faint warmth returned to him even as she drew from him. A loop, fragile but real. His chest tightened. She wasn't just feeding. She was trying to connect. "Maybe we're not so different," Hale whispered. Her black eyes glimmered, and for the first time her lips curved slightly. Not a full smile, but close enough to shake him. Outside the med bay, Joran watched with narrowed eyes. His voice was low, sharp. "Captain's losing his mind. That thing's wrapping him around her finger." But inside, Hale understood something the others did not. The alien's secret wasn't just survival. It was trust. She could take everything, if she wanted, but she didn't. Instead, she offered something else. A fragile bond, a bridge between species built on warmth and restraint. And Hale knew, deep in his bones, that this connection was only the beginning. What he didn't know, what none of them knew, was how far it would be tested in the dark days ahead. The ship floated steady, carrying its small crew through the endless dark. Days had passed since they had rescued the alien, and though she still shivered at times, she no longer looked like a fragile shadow. Her silver skin carried a faint glow, now her black eyes brighter, more aware. But with her strength grew questions. The crew wanted answers. It began in the mess hall. Duran slammed his fist against the table, his voice sharp. "Enough hiding, Captain. We don't even know what it is. Where did she come from? Why was her ship destroyed? And why is she the only one alive?" Dr. Laris responded calmly, though. Her jaw tightened. "She may not understand us." "Then make her," Duran growled. "If she's smart enough to feed from us, she's smart enough to speak." The crew's eyes turned to Captain Hale. He leaned back in his chair, silent. His mind kept circling the same thought. She knows more than she shows. He had seen it in her eyes, the way she watched, listened, learned. She wasn't a mindless creature. She was holding something back. That night, Hale went to the med bay alone. The alien sat on the bed, her blanket draped around her shoulders like a small cloak. When he entered, her black eyes locked onto him, steady and unblinking. He sat down slowly. "I need to understand you," he said softly. "Where you come from? What happened to your people?" Of course, she didn't understand his words, but his tone, his expression, those she could read. For a long moment, she didn't move. Then slowly, she raised her thin hand and touched her chest. Her fingers glowed faintly as she pressed against her skin. Hale frowned, leaning forward. "You?" She nodded once. Then she spread her hands outward, away from her chest, and her skin shimmered. The room dimmed and suddenly light filled the air. Not just light, images. A memory unfolded before Hale's eyes. He saw a vast world beneath twin suns. Towers of silver stone rose high above glowing rivers. Strange beings like her walked the streets, their bodies shimmering with the same silver veins. They glowed brighter than she ever had, whole, strong, alive. He heard their hums, soft songs filling the air like living music. It was beautiful, peaceful, alive with warmth. Then the scene shattered. Dark ships appeared in the skies, blotting out the twin suns. Fire rained down. Explosions tore through towers. The glowing rivers turned black. The humming voices twisted into screams. Hale's breath caught as he watched her people fall one by one, their bodies burning under weapons too powerful to fight. The attackers were faceless shadows, their ships sharp and cruel, their weapons without mercy. The tiny alien sat trembling, her hands glowing as she pushed the images out for him to see. Her chest rose and fell fast, her black eyes shining with tears that caught the light. The memory shifted again. A small group of survivors huddled in the dark. Among them was a younger version of her, smaller, weaker, her eyes wide with fear. The elders placed their hands on her head, their silver glow pouring into her body. She cried, reaching for them, but they pushed her away. One by one, their lights dimmed, until only she remained. Alone. The image faded, and the room returned to the dim hum of the med bay. The alien's hands dropped to her lap. She curled inward, trembling again, the blanket pulled tight. Hale sat frozen. He didn't need her language to understand. Her people were gone. All of them. She was the last. Slowly, Hale reached out. She flinched, but he didn't stop. His hand rested gently on her shoulder. "I'm sorry," he whispered. Her black eyes lifted to his. For the first time, she didn't look like a creature to be studied, or even a survivor fighting to live. She looked like someone grieving, someone utterly alone. Later, Hale gathered the crew. They listened as he explained what he had seen. Her world, her people, their destruction. Some faces softened with pity, others hardened with suspicion. Duran crossed his arms. "So the story is she's a victim? Convenient. Maybe her people weren't so innocent. Maybe they were destroyed for a reason." Dr. Laris glared at him. "No child deserves to carry the death of an entire race." "She's not a child," Duran snapped. And if those shadows are still out there, then keeping her on board makes us a target. The crew broke into argument, fear against compassion, doubt against trust. But Hale stayed silent, his mind heavy with what he had seen. Because deep down he knew Joran was partly right. The attackers hadn't come for nothing. They came for a reason. And if this tiny alien truly was the last of her kind, then whatever she carried inside her was worth killing for. That night, as the crew argued, the alien lay in the medbay staring at the ceiling. Her black eyes shimmered in the dark. She remembered her people's song. She remembered the heat of their hands. She remembered their choice to give her all they had left. She remembered their final words, not spoken, but burned into her heart. Survive, and so she would, even if it meant keeping more secrets. The ship felt smaller now. Every corridor, every chamber seemed tight, filled with heavy silence. The alien's presence was no longer new, it was a question hanging over all of them. A question no one wanted to answer out loud. At the central table, the crew gathered again. Their faces were tense, their voices sharper than before. Joran stood, arms crossed, his shadow stretching across the room. "Captain, we can't keep pretending. That thing is dangerous. Maybe she looks weak now, but what happens when she's strong? What happens when she decides she doesn't need us anymore?" Dr. Laris shook her head. "You don't see her. You only see fear. She had the chance to drain Hale completely. She didn't. That's a choice too." "That's a trick," Joran snapped back. "Parasites always hide until it's too late." The words cracked the crew into two sides. Some nodded with Joran, fear sharpening their eyes. Others shifted uncomfortably, unwilling to see the tiny figure in the medbay as a monster. And in the center of it all, Hale listened. His jaw was tight, his hands clenched. He had stayed silent too long, but he didn't know which way the scale would fall. In the medbay, the alien sat curled on the bed. She didn't need a translator to know her fate was being argued beyond the walls. Her black eyes stared at the floor, her blanket clutched to her chest. The heater hummed beside her, but it wasn't enough. Warmth wasn't just in the air, it was in trust, in belonging. And she could feel how quickly that warmth was slipping away. When Hale finally entered, she lifted her gaze. Their eyes locked, and she saw the weight in his face. He sat beside her, speaking softly. "They don't trust you. I want to, but I can't decide for all of them." She didn't answer, but her trembling hands moved again. This time she pressed them against his arm. The pull came, gentle, soft, controlled. Hale felt weaker but also calm. She wasn't begging with words. She was begging with restraint. And that silence spoke louder than any language. Hours later, the choice came. The crew stood in the mess hall, the ship's lights dimmed to conserve power. The stars outside burned cold, watching. Hale's voice was steady as he faced them. "We vote. Do we keep her? Or do we leave her at the nearest station and move on?" Joran's answer came first. "We leave her, no hesitation." Laris spoke next. "We keep her. She's alone and she's more than some parasite. I've seen her control it. She's trying." One by one, the crew gave their answers. The voices balanced back and forth, fear against compassion, suspicion against mercy. When the last vote was spoken, all eyes turned to Hale. The decision rested on him. He closed his eyes for a long moment. Images flashed behind his lids, the tiny figure shivering in the wreck, her song at the viewing deck, her memories of fire and loss, her trembling hand choosing not to take more than he could give. She wasn't innocent. That much was true. But innocence was not the same as worth. Finally, he opened his eyes. "She stays." The room broke. Some sighed with relief. Others cursed under their breath. Joran slammed his fist against the wall. "You're sentencing us all, Captain." "No," Hale said firmly. "I'm giving her a chance. If she wanted us dead, we'd be dead already. We don't abandon survivors. Not while I command this ship." His voice cut through the argument. Final, absolute. The alien didn't hear the words, but she felt the shift. When Hale returned to the medbay, she lifted her gaze. Again. Her eyes shimmered, not with hunger this time, but something closer to gratitude. For the first time, she reached her hand out not to take, but simply to touch his. But not everyone accepted the choice. That night, Joran stood alone in the corridor, his jaw tight, his hand gripping the cold steel wall. He could not accept trusting the alien, not when every instinct screamed she was a threat. She'll destroy us, he whispered to himself. And when she does, no one will say I didn't warn them. His eyes burned as he stared at the medbay door down the hall. Inside, the alien slept at last, her small body curled under the blanket, her breathing steady. But even in sleep, her skin glowed faintly with silver veins pulsing like quiet fire. And Joran's shadow stretched longer, darker. The choice had been made. But choices always carry consequences. That night, Hale dreamed of twin suns burning, of silver towers falling, of the alien's song turning into a scream. He woke in cold sweat, his hand gripping the edge of the bed. He had chosen to keep her. He had chosen to protect her. Now he only prayed he had chosen right. The ship drifted quietly through deep space, its crew carrying the weight of their decision. The alien stayed, and though she was still small and fragile, the air inside the vessel felt different now. She was no longer just a passenger. She was part of them, but peace in space is never permanent. It began with the alarm. Red lights flashed across the corridors, the ship's voice echoing. Unidentified vessels detected, approaching fast. The crew rushed to stations. On the viewing deck, the black void was broken by shadows, 3 sharp angular ships sliding out of the darkness. Their hulls were black as ash, their shapes cruel, their weapons glowing with deadly fire. Joran cursed under his breath. Hunters. Dr. Laris froze, her face pale. The same ones who destroyed her world. Hale's chest tightened. The alien stood behind him, wrapped in her blanket, her wide eyes fixed on the sight outside the glass. Her small hands shook. She knew them. She remembered. The hunters had found her again. The first blast shook the ship. Metal groaned. Lights flickered. The crew scrambled to return fire, but their weapons were weak compared to the enemy's. "We can't outrun them," shouted the pilot. "Engines won't hold." Another blast tore across the hull. Warning lights screamed. The ship was dying, and then, something unexpected. The alien stepped forward. Her blanket slipped from her shoulders. Her silver skin glowed brighter than ever before, veins of light pulsing like fire spreading through stone. Her black eyes burned with a sharp glow. "Captain," Laris whispered. "She's changing." The alien raised her hand, pressing it against the glass of the viewing deck. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the ship itself seemed to respond. Lights flickered, systems surged with new energy. The hum of the engines roared louder than before. She was feeding them. No, she was sharing. Outside, the hunters prepared another volley. But before they could fire, the alien's body blazed with light. A wave of shimmering energy burst outward, racing through the ship like a storm. The humans gasped as their weakness faded. Muscles strengthened. Vision sharpened. The ship's power reading spiked. Hale felt it directly. Warmth surging into him, filling the hollow spaces where fear had lived. "She's giving herself to us," he realized. The hunters opened fire. But this time the human ship moved with new speed, dodging the burning blasts. The crew returned fire and their weapons struck harder than ever before. The alien stood unmoving, her body glowing brighter and brighter, her strength flowing into every system, every human. She trembled, her lips parted in silent pain. But she did not stop. "Captain," Laris cried. "She can't hold it for long." Hale looked at the small figure, her face glowing like silver flame. She was shivering again, not from cold but from giving too much. He shouted to the crew, "All weapons, fire!" The ship's cannons blazed. Energy beams tore through one of the hunters, splitting it apart in a burning explosion. The second ship swung wide, but the human struck again, crippling its engines. The third hunter, seeing the battle turn, broke formation and fled into the void. The silence that followed was heavier than the alarms. The human crew stared at the shattered remains drifting outside. They had won. But victory had a price. The alien collapsed to her knees. The glow around her body dimmed, her silver veins fading to a faint shimmer. She gasped weakly, trembling, harder than ever. Hale rushed forward, catching her before she fell. Her skin was cold again, icy against his hands. "Stay with me," he whispered, holding her close. "You did it. You saved us." Her black eyes opened slowly, focusing on him. For a moment there was no hunger in them, no fear, only something, close to peace. She reached her small hand to his chest, pressing lightly. The pull came, but softer now, almost like a final thread tying them together. And then she let go. The medbay was silent later, the alien resting once more beneath her blanket. The heater hummed, but everyone knew it was not enough. She had burned too much of herself to save them. Lara stood nearby, whispering, "She should be dead. No body that small can give that much." Hale sat beside her bed, his hand resting on hers. She chose to. The alien stirred, her black eyes opening, again. She looked at the crew gathered around her, the same humans who had doubted, feared, argued. Her lips trembled, and for the first time she spoke. One word, broken, soft, but clear. Home. The crew fell silent. Hale's chest tightened. He squeezed her hand. "Yes," he said firmly. "You're home now." Outside, the void stretched, endless. The hunters were gone for now. But Hale knew they would return. They had not wanted the humans. They had wanted her, and if they wanted her, then she was more than a survivor. She was a weapon, a secret, a spark of something greater than humanity had ever known, not innocent, not harmless, but theirs now. The tiny alien had chosen them, and Hale knew with chilling certainty that the galaxy would never be the same.